an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 1, Episode 4, The World in the Walls. In this episode, so remember how last episode I just said that I hated Quentin and I hoped he died and I never wanted to see him again? Now, I said that I hoped that he'd die because I just kind of wanted him out of my face. But Julia really takes it too far here, doesn't she? And that's me saying that. Yikes, guys. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Word of warning right now. The power looks like it went out in my house. This happens sometimes. For some reason where we are, we're really susceptible to this. But I have a backup power supply for my computer. I am hoping that will get me through until it turns on again. It just turned on, but it turned off twice now. So fingers crossed that we're okay. This is what happens when you live in the backwoods. So, let's start. First of all, I want to say out of the gate, I really, really liked this episode a lot. This one felt a lot more... There was just a really strong nightmare quality that I thought they did excellently. And whoever is in charge of like the... editing and cinematography for this show, I feel like is really, really good. They just managed to get some things across that I feel like you could have done any number of ways, and they find some of the more unsettling ways to do it. And I was just really riveted by this. Some of the other episodes, I don't want to even say like tuned out, but you know when your attention wanders, but you haven't even quite realized that that's what's happening, and you just find yourself like picking up your phone or something. I had that happen a couple times in previous episodes, and then I'd have to be like, oh shit, no, stop. And like go back and rewind just a minute or two to make sure that I hadn't somehow like missed a crucial thing in the 45 seconds in which I was reading Facebook. And this episode, that didn't happen at all. I was just really engaged. And I also feel like they're giving me some more stakes now that I care about a little bit more because of what's going on with Julia, because I don't really like Quentin that much. Even though I don't love what's happening with Julia, it's interesting. And it's really like got me... I'm rooting for her in that way that you do when there aren't a lot of options, and she's like the one that I'm, she's a woman. She's being screwed over by a dude who could have helped her, maybe, because she won't fuck him. And is an overachiever who really likes to come out on top regarding everything. And I am also that way. So in a lot of ways, I just relate to her as a person. And what's happening with her and the poor decisions that she's making, as much as it's easy for me to sit back and point at her and just be like, Julia, I told you didn't ask enough questions before you decided to throw in with these people. I told you didn't know anything about anybody, and you're over here like pledging loyalty and getting fucking tattoos. What are you thinking? At the same time, I have to admit that if I found out that I had magical powers of any kind, and I was shown this, like basically I'm brought to Hogwarts and then told, oh, sorry, you're just not quite there, are you? And sent back, I don't know that I would really question whoever decided to teach me magic the way that I should, because I'd just be so fucking desperate. Can you imagine? So it's really tempting for me to just be like, Julia, sweetie, what are you doing? And I have to step back and remember that like this whole situation is basically a dream come true for many of us. Finding out that you have magical powers, that there is a school dedicated to teaching you magic. And then having that ripped away, and not only are you not allowed in, but almost nobody is aware this is real or would believe you if you told them. So now it's just something that you have to live with in your head. And it makes so much more sense why she's so angry at Quentin for not telling them that she is improving and that she needs to take the test again. And granted, I stand by it. What he said about people can fly, people can bend light, you can do a party trick. He's not wrong about the fact that everybody at this school just does seem really, really out of her league. At the same time, when he is confronted by the dean this episode, and the dean's like, you should have told me that she wasn't properly erased, I can't help but think Quentin let that continue because he liked having something he could lord over her. And it wouldn't work if she didn't remember. How's he going to feel superior about it if she doesn't even know? You know, like I fancy myself to be a person that likes to focus on the bigger picture most of the time. But I can't deny giving in to my pettier impulses at times. And wanting someone to be aware that you're better than them and knowing that if they didn't know, it wouldn't have the effect on your ego. That's something I really understand, as gross and horrible as it is, and as totally unforgivable as it is, considering where that's coming from for him. That he claims to have feelings for her, but he also can't stand that she's been better at so many things in life. You don't care about her then, dude. That's not what's happening here. If you really loved her and cared about her, you'd be glad for her success throughout life, and you'd want her to be happy. So the fact that you're reacting this way and then enjoying her pain that she can't get in where you are, that just means that you are kind of a bad person. And I'm putting this out there as my theory that as to why he didn't tell the dean that she wasn't erased. I think this is why. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll find out later that he was just well, I just didn't want, or maybe he was even a bit worried that if he told them that she wasn't properly erased, they'd realize that she did have more talent than they saw initially and would let her in after all. Either way, yikes, Quentin. So anyway, I just realized because the power went out, I didn't give credit to Jessie who commissioned this episode. So many thanks to Jessie for this. And I really I'm trusting all of you guys, and I'm feeling where things are starting to go now at this 4th episode. Ashley says, I'm not sure if book comparisons are allowed in these, but what happened in the book was that he was so self-involved that he straight up forgot about it. That's generous. I mean, I feel like the book comparison is something if y'all feel, you have seen far enough ahead that you can tell if a book comparison is going to spoil anything. So I trust you all to do that. It's not something that I would risk with a show that's currently running because you never know if they're going to wind up doing something that's kind of like True Blood. They'd all of a sudden pull something out of the books. But in terms of his motivation in not telling, I feel like probably in the books, you are able to get more of a sense of him being so completely wrapped up in classes that it's easier to believe that. As a viewer of this show, he seems to be very aware of Julia. And there have been some serious run-ins with crazy shit, but that doesn't mean that he's not It just doesn't feel like there is time for him to forget about things to that level. And the conversation that he has with her, and I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, the very first time where he tells her maybe this in particular just isn't for you. I think it's outside her birthday party, right? When he says that to her, I think he's with Breakbill's people. So that's the other thing, is that I have a hard time believing that he would just forget when he has friends from school with him and goes back to school immediately after the birthday party. And it's just the kind of thing that I had a big fight actually with Owen one time because there was somebody in his life that had really, really hurt me. And he had told me that he was not going to like be friends with them anymore. And I found out that he was still, and it really fucked me up. And he claimed that he forgot and that he was going to remove them from his social circles. But I always felt that he made himself forget because he didn't want to do it. And that's certainly something that we as human beings are capable of. We decide we don't want to deal with something and push it so far back in our minds that we are just as good as forgot, even though that's not really what happened, is it? Jessie says that's very true. The first book heavily focuses on Q, and Julia's story is not presented side by side like it is in the show. But in the show, I think he leans more toward just pushing her out of his mind rather than forgetting. Yeah, that's just, you know, from the way this is done, I could really see it being a whole different impression in the book if you're in his point of view the whole time. But because they have their paths cross several times already, it just doesn't feel like that's really... I'm not sure if the show expects me to believe that he just forgot, but I feel like the show is kind of throwing Quentin under the bus a little bit and being like, oh, he remembered. He just didn't want to fucking deal with this. So anyway, all right, let's go back to the actual episode. So we start off with this gray light and he's in bed and he looks like hell. And my immediate thought was, oh my God, are we going back in time? I didn't think this was how this was going to work. Because you know the second that you see his face and you see the coloring of the screen, like they have a filter that makes everything this sort of gray-green. And the second that you see the sheets in the bed, when he sits up, you're like, this is the hospital that he was in. I know that's what this is. What the fuck is going on? So of course, my initial instinct is, okay, it looks like this is now, but we're starting off this episode with like some kind of cold open that is showing us what things were like for him in the past. And then when he goes and like starts to walk around and we start to see people from break bills, I'm like, oh no, there's a whole other thing happening. Like, this start is so careful and slow building. The moment when he's going through the drawers and you can tell that he's like probably looking for his book. You don't know for sure yet, but you figure that's what it is. And then he notices the intake bracelet that he has on his wrist. And just all of these different like small moments of dread that build up as he, along with the audience, starts to figure out exactly what's going on here. And I just thought this was super, super duper well done because it's really unnerving, you know, and I was a little worried, I have to admit, about the dude who's sharing his room with him. I don't know how many of you have ever used Amazon X-Ray, but a lot of times they'll have like the names of characters when you swipe your mouse across the screen. Then the name of the actor and the character will pop up as you're watching. And it's really helpful to me when I do this show. And I was setting up and sort of like checking some things out. And this guy that he's sharing his room with doesn't even have a character title. He's just called Quentin's roommate. And I was worried when he showed up because he's got this real weird moment with his like, you know, stuffed rabbit, his pink stuffed rabbit. I was concerned that they were going to be doing something really kind of cliche with the whole idea of a mental hospital. Because it's really, really easy for even sort of elevated material, if the authors aren't coming from a place of compassion or knowledge, to go down a bad road with this sort of thing and make mental illness something that's like a boogeyman and turn inmates into a series of monsters, right? But I was very gratified to find that they made the other inmates very much like just peripheral, and it's the staff that's the problem. And I really was glad to see that because with this intro of his roommate, I thought he was going to be this like big bad kind of hanging around all the time. And I was just so glad that they didn't go in that direction, especially considering that his roommate is a man of color as well. So yeah, he's walking around And he fucking runs into Elliot, who plays this like, this tweaker, for lack of a more descriptive word, way better than I would have believed. Like, he's just really good at this. This whole thing is unnerving because it still does feel like Elliot. He manages to get across this guy being not okay, but still feel like Elliot that we know. And that's the part that makes all of this so convincing and frightening, is that a lot of the people that he runs into still have the vibe of the person that we thought we knew at Break Bills. And as a viewer, I never had any moment's doubt that this was a bad dream or spell or illusion. I figured that's what was going on from the moment I realized that we weren't back in time. I was like, okay, somebody's doing this to him. However, even though as a viewer I know that this isn't real, it's not an easy illusion for me to constantly be aware of. I sank into believing it occasionally, despite myself. And I love that they got that across so well, because it really serves to underscore, if you were somebody like Quentin, who has had some episodes before of like, you know, some kind of break. And if you are afraid of yourself and worry sometimes that you're going to hurt people, or if you're afraid of yourself because you did wonder for a long time whether you were even normal or if you were totally disconnected from reality, you can understand why he starts to believe, even though he really in his gut knows better. And there are a few moments of him just shouting things like, giving, you know, I need the book. It's the only way out of here. And he'll stop and think, oh my God, I sound fucking nuts. And that's really the thing. When people begin to gaslight you, and that's what this is. This is a huge gaslighting spell. When people start to do that, and they do it really effectively, you internalize it enough that everything you feel and think is under new scrutiny and begins to be a little bit suspect to you, even though up until this point you've been confident in knowing certain things. And this is just, you know, so many different groups of people have experienced this kind of treatment of people making them think things are and women especially, is like, we go through our lives being gaslit, being told, oh, I'm sure that guy who sexually harassed you didn't mean it that way. You're probably taking it the wrong way. I'm sure that guy who was leering at you wasn't even looking at you. I bet you're taking it the wrong way. I don't think that they passed you over for that promotion because you're a woman. I think you're reading a little bit too much into this. Do you think you've actually done the work to deserve that position? And then once you get a fucking promotion, you think to yourself, oh my God, do I even deserve this? I'm not sure that I should be here. I really don't know enough. They shouldn't have promoted me. This is a mistake. I'm going to humiliate myself. Oh my God, what am I even doing here? And you just start to fucking really think that. And a guy can come up to you and literally grab your ass, and you ask yourself, he probably didn't mean that. That was an accident, I bet, huh? And just genuinely start to doubt every fucking thing. Even the most cut and dried black and white situations become riddled with fucking doubts, because so many people have convinced you that you are misreading the situation. And so this whole thing with him, like, periodically coming to himself and being like, nope, never mind. I saw this, or I did this. And then everybody around him being like, did you? Did you though? And him slowly like sinking back down is so sad to watch. And that moment, guys, you know the moment I mean, when Julia comes to visit him. Let's take a step back, shall we? So, I am on record screaming at Quentin for the way that he talked to and treated Julia last episode. I cannot quite use strong enough language to get across how insanely out of proportion I feel this reaction is. And hear me out. The thing is, she only intended it to basically be a nightmare, right? She wanted him to have this period of a terrible nightmare that feels really real. And then he wakes up and it's over. And it's probably he would remember it more than you remember a dream because it was an actual spell and it feels more real to him. But it would have been, I don't know, half an hour, something like this. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have really, really, really vivid dreams. Like vivid dreams with soundtracks and smells and whole like intricate storylines that I have written like Facebook posts about that come up in my memories. And I'm like, that is actually a really rad short story idea. I need to remember this. And there are people like Owen, my fiance, for whom dreams dissipate when they wake up and they don't remember anything and it just doesn't really stick. That is not how it is for me a lot of the time. I can remember many dreams that I've had in excruciating detail to the point that I will still have the hairs rise on my arm because the dream was so creepy, and it's still so creepy to me even now, even in the light of day, even practically a decade later. And this sort of spell, I feel, is a particularly cruel thing to do to somebody with a history of mental health issues. I feel like it's not even the aspect of him having been in a mental health institution before. It's not even that she chose a mental health institution for the dream to take place and how personal to him that is. That all is terrible enough. But setting that aside, if you are somebody who is very sensitive, which you can see Quentin is, and if you are somebody who is emotionally affected by things and they leave a mark on you, even if this were only a half-hour long dream, I don't feel like he'd wake up and just be okay again. I feel like this would fuck him up in ways that she wouldn't know about for a long time. And I have no doubt that this is something he's going to be grappling with for a little while, because this is just so intensely like long lasting. It's so far beyond what she had intended, as we find out, because it was supposed to be short, that the damage is just, I feel like if we were in a show that was a little bit less plot driven and more like specifically character focused and thus slow moving, we might have some moments of Quentin having like flashbacks to this. The show may wind up doing that anyway. I don't know. But from where I'm sitting right now, I could see him kind of like having trouble moving past this as a person. So there's just so many layers to why choosing to do this way is really, really cruel and ugly, and just feels like finding the particular trauma that somebody experienced and forcing them to go through that again, And I just can't imagine doing this to somebody, even if they had treated me the way he treated her. The only way that I would be okay with doing something like this to a person is if it felt like they were going to hurt somebody else, and this was like the only way to keep them from doing that. And even then, I feel like I'd come up with some other way, And so topping that all off, she inserts herself into this and makes it so that she is coming to visit him and make sure that he is like doing okay. And we have him like with his first meetup with the doctor. Her name is Dr. London. And as he's talking to her, there are all of these moths flying around the room. And when he says this to her about the moths, she gets this expression on her face that makes it very clear he's mentioned this before. Moths are obviously a really familiar theme in his care in this universe, you know. And he turns away from her as she's like giving him this sympathetic face. And when he turns back, her whole head is just moths like the beast. And she's like coming towards him saying that she's worried and, you know, everything is okay. He tells her, you know, the moths are here. And one of them comes at him. And then all of a sudden there's a swarm. And he's on the floor freaking out as these moths attack him. But from her perspective, it pretty much just looks like he's having a seizure. It's really horrible to watch. And when he runs into Alice, they do that a really smart thing where they trick you into thinking, oh, everybody's in this illusion together, but Alice is one of the few that has managed to overcome it. This isn't specific to Quentin. This is specific to Breakbills and his friends. Alice is trapped here as well, but we know she's such a strong magician that she's actually managing to remember and get out. But then it turns out that isn't it at all. This is an Alice of his imagination, and she is suffering from some other kind of like schizophrenia or paranoid delusion sort of thing. And so she like lures him in enough to make him start to talk to her about what he thinks is going on. And he then realizes too late that she's not talking about what he thought. And the total disappointment in his face as he realizes that like, this is just very I Am the Cheese in some ways, except, you know, it doesn't turn out to be the way I Am the Cheese does. It's the opposite, but. So his encounter with Alice is cut short because she's basically like carried away by guards. She says something about wanting to mate with him because the like aliens want her to. And from across the room, Elliot is like, me three. And I just was like, oh, Elliot, never change, buddy. You are just consistent AF. So this is when he is talking to Julia. She comes to see him. And this is so cruel, guys. When she comes in, she acts as if she's just here to offer support in this situation and starts talking about going to Yale and says something about how, like, you would have, I mean, you will totally agree, you know, once, you know, you're out of here. And he says, so let me get this straight. You've been at Yale for months and I've been here this whole time. And she's looking at him saying, you don't remember. And gets this whole expression on her face of like really profound concern and grief, and her lip trembles like it's hurting her so much to see how sick he actually is. She talks about the wedding and there's like an engagement ring on her hand. Like all of this is supposed, like she is hitting that specific note about the engagement because of the way that he talked to her. And when he says, are you engaged? That's really like, she sort of laughs about that and keeps on being like, it's not a big deal. And knowing, of course, it's a big deal to him because of the way that he reacted earlier. So finally, he starts talking to her about, this is a spell, nobody knows but me. And he tries to show her some magic. And he manages to do some fireworks. Really, really small, understated fireworks. But nevertheless, I feel like that's pretty impressive considering his situation, that he was able to get anything to happen. Nobody around him at all seems to notice. Jules seems to not see what is happening. But then, later on when she's talking to him, she says something about, I really wanted to see the fireworks. And I swear to God, guys, when she said that, I almost had a heart attack. Because you know what that means. I had been suspecting this was her, like it entered my mind. But as things progressed and she showed up, I was like, no. She's not that cruel. No way. And I just kept being like, giving her the benefit of the doubt. But once she says, I really wanted to see the fireworks, he says to her, how did you know they were fireworks? And she's like, you told me. And he says, no, I didn't. I never said that word. And then comes this moment where they cut her laughing in over her concerned face. And it is the freakiest, guys. Oh my God. I love when tiny little moments and effects like that can be so high impact. Like, this is the kind of, like, I want to compare this to the moment in Lord of the Rings where Frodo has the ring around his neck and Bilbo wants to hold it again one last time. And he won't let Bilbo take it, and Bilbo like kind of freaks out for a second. That shudder of her face and the laughing coming through. It's not quite as like grotesque as Bilbo, but there's something much more unsettling about it because of the setting and the whole way that you have started to doubt yourself. Like if you're Quentin, and wondering if you just imagined that or not. The whole thing is just so fucked up. So yeah, he says something like, did anybody else see that? You laughing at me? And she's looking at him like, laughing at you? What kind of a friend would do that? She says. And he says, exactly. And she fucking smirks and says, goodbye, Quentin. And she gets up and leaves. And I want it pointed out, as she's leaving, I really noticed how out of everybody in this room, everybody's wearing grays and whites and blacks and all of these really subdued colors. But when she stands up, she is wearing this cobalt blue coat that really looks like one of the only real things in the room in a lot of ways. And it's just underscoring that she is able to get out of here anytime. He is stuck and she isn't. And there is this weird, like crossover here happening with Penny being in this illusion, because Penny is one of the orderlies. And tying into last episode where he came up and yelled at Quentin rather too forcefully about humming Taylor Swift in his head, he is able to reach out to the real Penny because he is singing it so loudly in this illusion. And I found it really interesting that he can reach out to the real Penny, even though we find out that he's like across campus. He's I think they find him in like a broom closet or something, right? Where he's been just like kept out of the way. And yet Penny was still accessible to him. And that makes me wonder why they have such a connection, because like I was last episode kind of struck by how angry Penny got, to me, really over the top angry at Quentin for not closing off his mind. But I'm starting to wonder now if there's something about Quentin that makes him easier for Penny to read or connect to than other people. And so maybe Quentin's volume is louder than most people's, and that's why he got so mad and so irritated. So in this illusion, Penny is here, but he is one of the orderlies, and he is really tormenting him about the fact that he's not taking his pills, about like, just as the illusion goes on, he becomes more and more of a caricature. And I can't tell you how much I laughed when he shows up in the dream and the orderly version of him is still there in the background talking about curry with this really intense accent. And he turns around to Quentin and is like, you racist motherfucker. I want to ask you guys, really quick side note. There is swearing in this show, but the swearing is always, it's not bleeped, it's like distorted. Every time they do it, it's like they take the middle syllable out. So when he says, you racist motherfucker, it comes out, you racist motherfucker. And I'm wondering if that's how it's aired as well, or is this something that's happening because I'm watching it on Prime and they've decided to do something? I'm just really interested to hear if you guys know anything about the way that they're doing this, because I wasn't aware that like just distorting the sound of the word was an option now, that you could just do that and not bleep it, or that you could just include it in the script at all. Actually kind of surprises me if they decide to do this. Jessie says it's aired on Sci-Fi that way, but when I watch it on Netflix, it's the full swear. Is this show on Netflix? Because I tried to get it on Netflix and I couldn't. I wound up having to buy it on Amazon. Well, shit, I spent $20. Oh well, what are you going to do? It's weird though that on Netflix it's the whole thing, but on Amazon Prime it's not. I wonder why that is. Okay. He is continuing to question all these different realities, and he gets really upset when Jane visits him and is utterly useless. I have to say, Jane, you are really fucking annoying. You know, she's over here like, he finally says to her, how about you just tell me what to do and don't do this fucking bullshit riddle nonsense anymore. And she's like, she says something like, what to do for you might be, like, it's just this whole other fucking, she does not do what he asks, in other words. She continues on with the riddle bullshit. And to a point, I'm just like, Jane, you know, if you're not going to be fucking helpful here, why don't you just take a hike? The one thing that she does is tell him that this is a spell. She says it's in the book, but the book is you. This is all you. And he says, me? Which book? And she points, and as she's pointing, her hand starts to disappear. And he tells her they made him take pills so he can't remember. And I'm like, dude, those pills weren't real. Keep in mind, like he's weirdly like assigning some sort of power to those pills that are part of the illusion. And he is waking up because he has this vision and it looks like it's happening in the moment and it's real. But when he wakes up, the roommate of his is peeling the book apart and tearing up all of the pages. And he is flipping out, obviously, over the fact that they're all jumbled up together and that he's going to have to figure out a way to put them back together again. And they won't give him any tape to put them back together again, because apparently you can hurt yourself if you do it that way. Like you can use tape to strangle, or I think that she lists something else in addition to strangling. That was the first one that I personally thought of, but I just thought it was such a, like, if somebody is really trying to kill themselves so hard that they're willing to use tape, I feel like that's, she says they can strangle, suffocate, and that's when he interrupts her. Okay, so that really is kind of the only thing that she says. He asks her if he can put the pages back together while she watches so that she knows that he's not misusing the tape. And she tells him nobody has that kind of time. And tells him that he needs to get to music therapy. Well, what gives him the idea for this is that orderly, that's Penny, by the door, requesting that they please not do that one song. And he says it gets in my head and never leaves. And they start to sing some other song, and this is when Quentin is like realizing, oh, maybe I can do it this way. And he starts to sing Shake It Off. And it's really funny because when earlier Penny confronts him about singing Taylor Swift in his head, he doesn't say what song it is. And I don't really know Taylor Swift. Like, I know this one song because it was in another show, and I'm 100% positive that I've heard other songs of hers and I'm just not aware that it's her. She's just not somebody that's really on my radar because, to be honest, I stopped listening to like new music in 1998 because that's how I am. And I don't know anything about most new music unless you like make me, unless it's Beyonce, pretty much. She's like the one exception. And some Cardi B. But in terms of Taylor Swift, if you had asked me what song he was thinking to himself, I think I would have picked Shake It Off. Not only because it's literally the only song I know by its name, but also that is a song that people frequently are like, that is frequently directed at people who feel they're being bullied and or not part of society in a normal way, and that they're using this like as a means of reminding themselves that what other people think doesn't matter. And that feels really on brand for at least how Quentin sees himself, if not actually how he is. So he starts singing it, and the person playing the piano starts smiling at him and knows exactly what song and starts to play it. And he starts dancing around the room, singing the song really loud and getting everybody else to sing it with him. So this song, I would imagine, psychically speaking, is loud AF. And I can only imagine if poor Penny were around me when I have a song in my head, how much he would want to kill me. Because this scene, if I have a song in my head, this scene is pretty much what's going on in my head. I never just have a song in my head that I'm like blithely humming to myself while I'm doing stuff. In my head, we're in a club. There are lights spinning. You can feel the bass. I can see the bouncers at the door. I am wearing hot pants and knee-high boots. There are 1,500 other people here, and we are all jumping in time to the music, and it is serious. So if he were around me and could hear me, I'm pretty sure he would find a way to never, ever have to be around me ever again in his life. Because I don't think that he would never be able to get anything done if he, I'm barely able to get anything done through that shit. There's a pretty great moment where they pick him up and he like comes down the back of the chair in this really musical theater gesture, and he like flips his hair back, and it is pretty funny, to be honest. It's a very necessary moment of levity in this incredibly upsetting, dark period in this show. And he turns around and says something like, "Good luck getting that out of your head." And we see later that, in fact, it worked. And Penny is here. But Penny arrives while Quentin is busy with something else, namely his dad. And this is something that I feel I should have more of a reaction to, and I'm wondering if the show might have been better served if they had set up a little bit Quentin's relationship with his father before this episode. Because as of right now, his parents didn't even enter into my head. Like how they're feeling about everything, if they know where he is, or if he has made up a story for them. And the appearance of his father, and his father having this terrible injury that they tell him he inflicted onto his dad, I just don't really know if I feel like I'm supposed to have a more intense response to this than I did. Because what it feels like to me is the manifestation of a really deep-seated fear that he has personally, that he is going to hurt his father. But because I have no context for that, this kind of feels random. And I don't think it is. It feels like the way that they're presenting it feels like it's meaningful, and that this is something that's really like, it feels psychological. But the show hasn't led me to this point. So as of right now, I'm left sort of unsure. And this whole scene with his dad, they show him video. Like, they explain to him when he had his mental break. He accused his dad of being the beast. He's like attacked him and they had to like pull him off. And then they show him video of all of his time here. And he starts to sort of remember things that are, we know, false memories. But they're showing him video of him screaming that he wants his power back. He has to save them all. He's saying something like he's just, it's a very like padded room sort of moment, even though the room looks much more like a like the cell that police would question someone in, an interrogation room, I guess. And as he's remembering all of these, like, and starting to maybe believe it a little more than he was, Julia's here, and she's looking at him, and she's seeming to be a little bit worried, and snaps her fingers in front of his eyes and says, "Are you fucking with me? Dude, this'll all be over soon, okay? Just try not to get buried under it. I'm gonna talk to someone." And she gets up and leaves. So it's very clear at this point that she's seeing the damage that she can actually do, but doesn't, like, she doesn't seem to have come to terms with the fact that she doesn't know what she's doing, and she is trusting someone else to manage this spell with her that she doesn't know at all, whose motivations she doesn't know, nor has she asked for them. And I'm just, Julia, girl. So on the way out, she like bumps into Penny, and he is in this illusion seeing himself sweeping the floor. And this is when he yells at Quentin about being racist. Quentin is almost catatonic by this point in the corner, but he starts to shift a little bit when he sees the real Penny. And he, like, his initial reaction is, oh, good, more torture, basically. But Penny wakes him up out of it and is just like, no, dude, I totally, like, this is not real. I don't know what you're doing and where you are, but this isn't real. And Quentin finally tells him, okay, good, you need to wake up and you need to fucking find me because something is really, really wrong. And he just screams at him until Penny wakes up. And he wakes up at the same time that Julia comes out of it. And Julia is riding this high from doing this magic that apparently is like, because it's cooperative, there is something much more enhanced about it. And so it feels amazing, basically like a drug. Marina says it's high-end designer cooperative magic. And I mean, everybody talks about how intensely powerful this spell is. So I don't know about Julia being able to do party tricks, but there's something there that Marina at least can access and make use of. And I'm just wondering what's going to happen in that regard. And this is when Julia is like, all right, so I didn't think Q was going to go in so deep. We are, when is he going to come out of it? And Marina's like, oh, this is nothing. And Julia says, I don't know what you mean. And she says, oh, we really cooked up a whopper here. I don't see him getting out of it. And basically tells her he is going to be stuck in this illusion dream forever until he dies. It's this moment where Julia is saying, yeah, I wanted to fuck him up, not kill him. And I can't help but think, Julia, he's got mental health problems. Like those might be one and the same. This is why you have to be so fucking careful with shit. But in short, Marina is like, yeah, I'm not really worried about it. I'm not going to take it off of him for sure. And we find out later that part of the reason that she is doing this is because there is only one thing that can get him out of this spell. And it is this creature that they have to let down the wards of the school to allow in. So she wants to get into the school for whole other reasons. And the opportunity just happened to present itself to do something to this kid that would require them to pull down all of the wards. The only thing that can break the spell is a Mataris, evil bug spirit of the underworld. Now, I do have to confess that I was not really convinced about this. Like, this is a heist thing, right? Where they need to get the person who owns the casino or the bank or whatever to take down their security measures for just a moment for whatever reason. I wasn't convinced that this couldn't have been accomplished by carrying him outside of the wards and doing it outside, because then they wouldn't be risking literally the entire rest of the student population when they have just experienced a serious attack that blinded the dean. I feel like this was poor judgment on the dean's part and just not really thinking enough outside of the box. But what do I know? Maybe this is the only way it could have worked. I will say that I really like, as they take the wards down, there's these extremely faint bits of like what look like wisps of smoke and steam that appear for a moment. And some of them just look like sort of the kind of cobwebbing that you get when you break a windshield. It looks like that for a moment. But some of them resemble, really briefly, numerical equations, which magic as a kind of math is always something that I find really interesting. And it also is intimidating because I'm not super awesome at math, and I feel like maybe I would be bad at magic then, but who knows how this works. So it turns out that Marina used to go to break bills, and she got kicked out a couple of months before graduation. But when you've been at break bills that long, they can't just erase the memory of it out of your head. What they do, as she puts it, is amputate your magic. Amputate at least everything that you have learned. And this is a theme from a book that I'm covering for another Spoil Me. The first ones were called the Black Magician's Trilogy, and now I'm starting the Magician's Apprentice. And that there is a guild in that world in which if you decide that you don't want to study magic, or if they kick you out, they can just straight up take your magic from you. Like there's a power source in your sort of psyche, and they can access it and just remove it. That's not precisely what's going on with Marina, because she can still do magic. They just took training away from her and experience and set her back so that she sort of had to start from scratch. So what she says that once they take that from you, they store it somewhere. So what she wants is to get into the school when the security system is down and access this stored knowledge that is hers, she feels, and that she has a right to, and sort of reabsorb it all again. And it's pretty wild. Like when she goes into the room, there are all of these different like wooden boxes with names on them and stuff. Like it's literally being held inside of a container. Meanwhile, Quentin has managed to get out with Penny's help from the main part of the terrible nightmare, because it started to really spin out of control. It's no longer just, oh, you're in a mental hospital and you will never leave. Now it's, we're going to perform a fucking like turn of the century lobotomy on you by inserting this ice pick through your eye. And it's your father who's going to do it to you. The father that you injured and is covered in blood. The whole thing has really turned extremely grotesque and horrifying. So Jane appears in this like limbo that he finds himself in. And this is when he says, no more riddles, just tell me what to do. And she says, it doesn't matter what anyone tells you. You make the web you're in. You're the spider and the fly. Just like... And she looks up, and there's been this ongoing sort of story about a magician who got cursed by a witch because he cheated in a game against her. So she took all of his magic away, except in the except in the context of playing games. And he starts to kind of lose it because his, that was one of his few joys, was like being able to play games and have moments of surprise and excitement and basically experiencing life. But because he essentially can cheat his way through everything, it keeps him from enjoying or actually living in any real way, because nothing is a surprise anymore, because he controls everything, which is a really interesting little, it's a sort of, recently I was covering Wrinkle in Time for the book club, and one of the women, I think it's Mrs. Whatsit, is talking to them about how life is like a sonnet, and there are specific rules that you really can't break, but within those rules you can say whatever you want. And that if we didn't have free will and if things were predetermined, we'd be just like these people on Camazotz who were going about their lives like automatons. And that is sort of what this little parable is about, that having full and complete control over everything and having everything your own way actually leads to you losing your humanity, because you're not surprised by anything anymore. Meanwhile, Julia, who is here with Marina as Marina goes in and steals back her knowledge, she has decided that she is going to go to the dean and confess what she's done and explain to him the exact spell so that she can help him take this off of Quentin. But the dean is like, if you had done this maybe an hour ago, that might have helped. As it is, this does fucking nothing, and I don't think you did this alone. And also, what the fuck were you thinking? And I really like that even Penny, who doesn't like Quentin, is looking at her and just is like, what the fuck? Why would you do this? And she doesn't have an answer, because there's all it is that she was feeling petty and angry and just decided to do this uniquely horrifying thing. And Quentin manages to break out of the limbo by saying, oh, I get it. The only way to, because it says the Madness Maker didn't play for the joy of winning, just the fear of losing. The real curse was he only played when he could win, which cut him off from the surprise and horror and sadness and wonder of life. And he realizes what she's saying is the only solution is not to play. And he reaches up to this chessboard that's upside down above them and knocks the pieces off and wakes up, and this horrifying insect comes crawling out of his mouth, and I hate everything. Oh, it's the worst. Julia is standing there, but he doesn't see her, and I don't know if they tell him that she's the one who did this to him. It's unclear to me. Because once they look up, she has got the fuck out of there, and it turns out that this is Marina scooping her up and escaping with her. So Marina is aware of what Julia was doing. And there's a moment later on where she's in front of everybody and she says, I just can't believe that I ever thought I knew anything about anything. The magic that they took away from me. And she says, I would like to share now some of it with some of you. And she does a little thing towards Julia, and Julia's arm goes up and all of her stars disappear off of her arm. All of her, what do you call it? Tattoos. They don't disappear. They each get an X over them. For a second, I thought it looked like they were going to, but they each get a red X. And Julia's like, wait, what? What are you doing? And she says, I didn't get you out of there because you pulled one over on me. You and Katie bitched out, but you'd talk. She can't. And I really want to know why she can't, what it is this bitch has on her. And says, poor you and your taste of honey worse than none at all. You think break bills cut you off from magic? And then You don't know, cut off, but baby, you will. And the next instant, Julia is outside and the building that they were in does not even appear to be there anymore. So, second time, you done fucked up, Julia. I am really hopeful this will lead to Julia figuring a way to train herself or finding somebody, maybe Alice. Alice just left school. And for all I know, there's a way for them to cross paths. But I would be pretty surprised if Julia is able to and it also all depends on whether or not Quentin knows it's Julia who did this to him. So that sort of colors things as well. But yeah, this was a really, really good episode. I'm also really enjoying getting to see how nuts Marina is. I was getting a little bit tired of her casual bitchiness that they have with her sucking on a cigarette and just saying something really callous. And I was like, oh, this is a little boring. But now that she has real power, I'm feeling a little bit more like, oh shit, maybe this is going to be real, real bad actually. She's just the kind of person you don't want being able to do the shit she's able to do now. You just don't. There's a reason they fucking expelled her is what I'm saying. And I would like to know what that reason is. Also, though, I feel like it maybe doesn't make a difference. You're just dealing with a kind of a psychopath now. What happened before might not actually be that important unless it's related to the beast. Maybe this is why 16 people killed themselves in the fountain. Maybe she's tied to that somehow. I don't know. But I'm over time, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. But thank you again, Jessie, very much for commissioning this. This has been it's been a lot of ups and downs, but I'm starting to really feel like I've got my feet under me now at this. And I'm extremely interested in what happens next because I really don't know how Julia is going to react to all of this at this point. And I don't know. I imagine they will tell Quentin who it was. There's no reason for them not to tell him. But how Quentin will react when he finds out, that's another thing, because he might find her. He might go looking for her. And I don't want to see that either. So, all right. Thank you all again so much for coming. Thank you for being in the chat. I'm sorry, Huggabug, I'm just seeing your comment, but I don't have time. But I appreciate you all. And I will be seeing you again pretty shortly, actually, with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.